Hi, welcome. This is Mindset Warrior channel, and this is the Let's Talk series. I'm your host, Kennedy Kenny. Let's get straight into it. In this video, I want to talk about this current time, this age we live in right now. And we live in an age, so let me just get straight into it. We live in an age where there's war happening in the world, and there's war in Ukraine, there's war in Israel, and then there's some dynamics happening all over the world simultaneously. And these dynamics, they're building up to something interesting, something profitable. And before I tell you what it is building up to, we have to first of all discuss about what is this thing that is building up to begin with, and what are the ripple effects. And of course, these are not information that is new to you or anyone else. This is information that is readily available to everyone, anyone. It's just that the way I view the information portrays a different picture of what could be or what is. So the only difference about what I'm talking about is my perspective. But the data, the information, everything else is available to anyone and everyone, anywhere. So let's start the conversation from the war that is currently happening. So I've lived in this world for 24 years right now. So in that time that I've lived in this world, I've not seen war face to face. So most of my perspectives are from a person who has never been to war, from a person who doesn't believe in violence. So I might come off a little bit on the extremist, and this is a disclaimer that this information is not advice, is not anything that is legal or any of that. It's just a conversation. And yeah, enough with the disclaimer. So there is war happening in Ukraine. This war has been happening for a while now, probably a year and some years, in a couple of months. And it has been the way it began. It began with uh, NATO encroaching towards Russia, and then Russia declaring war with Ukraine to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. That's how it began. And then after some time, another war was began in Israel. The Israel and the Palestine and the Gaza is a whole other war happening there. And I don't want to take sides, but I still believe every human life has the same value. Just because you are in this side of the story, or in this side of the border, or in that side of the conversation, doesn't mean that you are more valuable or less valuable than anyone else. That's the basic understanding of humanity. We all are worth the same. I'm not talking worth in terms of financially, of course, we are not all worth the same financially, but I'm talking in terms of the value for life. We all deserve to live. So, taking that aside, this war, you see, we live in a world where not every single place is self sustaining. We are codependent. What we produce here in Kenya, coffee and the tea, is what is consumed in Europe, in US, in Asia, because our tea, our coffee is the best. And that's because of our unique climate and our unique environment here in Kenya. If you just cross the border down and you'll get to Tanzania. And in Tanzania, there is another unique climate, another unique environment, and they have their own unique products that they contribute to the general good, the world. Ukraine also is the brain basket of Europe. Is the bread basket of Europe. I mean, not the brain basket. Uh, the bread basket of Europe. And it has its own contribution in terms of the wheat and all that products that is generated from Ukraine. So this war, what is happening, right? In war, based on my little understanding of it, war requires financing and resources, and the resources includes food. So when this war is happening in Ukraine, the resources, that is the food that the Ukraine would have been exporting and contributing to the general public of the world, is being lost as spoils of the war. I don't know to which side. I'm not there, and I'm not part of the people who are there. So I don't know anyone who's there. So I don't know which side is taking it as their spoil. But the overall idea is that production that Ukraine would have been producing in terms of its contribution to the world because of its unique environment and climate, it's not coming to the world. It's going to the person, to the piece. It's being divided as spoils of war among the people fighting in the war. And this is the same happening in Israel. But Israel and Gaza, that war is creating a sort of a tension in that region. Such that in that region, the war itself is limiting the activity that would have been happening in Gaza, in Palestine, in Israel. Because you see, war is, when you look at the budget, for example, the budget of Kenya and the budget of US and the budget of these other countries, multinational countries, big countries, the biggest portion of it is allocated towards the military. And that is because of these situations where war arises, difference in opinion, difference in perspective, difference in whatever, just a difference. And a difference that they think or they feel cannot be resolved in simple non-violent ways, like negotiation. So they feel the need to exert their power in the field, in the battlefield. Unfortunately, such situation ends up with people losing their lives for something that could have been resolved in a simple conversation. But you see, that is the nature of people. You see, power is a very addictive and blinding thing because once you have it, you would want to prove to everyone else that it is yours and you're the one who should be exerting it. And this creates a sort of an illusion that now you're the mighty, high and mighty, and everyone should bow beneath thy feet. But you see, that's an illusion that is brought by the power. If that was how you felt all your life, from the moment you're born to the moment you're in power, then that's a sort of a character, the narcissistic character. But you see, there's something, people are normal, normal, and then they get power, then they change. That change is because of the blindness that comes with power. That's my view of it. But you see, this fight for power is not something that began in 2024 or in 2020 or in 2021 or 2019. This is something that's been with us since even before Christ, during the Roman empires, during the Chinese empires, during the kings and kingdoms, during way back. Even some of that information, that knowledge that was there has been lost through time. So we can't actually know the first day man discovered violence. But you see, in this current age of technology, where I can also record this video and send it to you to look at my ideas and listen to my thoughts, and this age, there is a lot of dynamics. that is introduced to the mix, this mix of war. And these dynamics, they add a little bit of spice and flavor that is unconsidered by the people who partake in this kind of shenanigans that is war. And in this video, I'm trying to describe some of these unconsidered perspective and unconsidered ripple effects that are going to be felt by not just me and you, but by most people who are not even aware of the war, who are not even part of it, who have nothing to gain from it, but they're going to feel the ripple effect of it. Take, for example, Ukraine stops exporting its grains to the world. So, in a market where the biggest supplier is not supplying, then the biggest consumer is left with less to consume. So, what happens? The price for what is left goes up because now what is left has to be divided by the little that is left has to be divided by everyone. And so that nobody can take the whole of it and leave everyone else hungry, they have to increase the price so that somebody has to work within a budget. And in that budget, they will not be able to take the whole thing. And in that case, creating a situation where that little is divided amongst many. But you see, that is in the grains department. There is the human resource department. And that is your best soldiers have gone to war and lost their lives. So you can't come back and can't revive them back to life so that you can send them back to war. You have to find fresh new soldiers to send to war. And that's the resource that cannot be replenished, the human resource. Because the more people go to war and die, the more people go to war and die, and the more people go to war and die, and the cycle keeps going on and on and on and on. So this is one resource that is diminishing but not being replenished. That's the one aspect of war. The other aspect is the resource that is being replenished. Let's say the grains. So we can argue the grains will grow back next year or the year before that and the year after that and the year after that. But you see, the dispute, for example, between Russia and Ukraine and the rest of the world, that dispute began a while back. We all agree on that. But ending it will not be as simple as the way it began. It began with an announcement. We declare war. But ending it will not be like an announcement. We have declared to cease war. Because you see, there are people whose lives have been distorted as a result of it. There are people who have lost loved ones as a result of it. There are people who have lost property as a result of it. And these people would not just as easily let go of that just because it has been said it is over. So there is that, like for example, think of World War II. Just because it was declared World War II has ended, didn't mean now everything goes back to normal. There was that period where things that had been destroyed had to be rebuilt. Things that people who are lost, people who are killed, had to be found, given a proper burial, and all that data had to be accommodated so as to know who was lost in the war, who survived the war, who did go to the war, who went and never came back. All that information has to be compiled. But in this case, as things are shaping up, the war is not coming to an end anytime soon. Because even as you hear the conversations being had by the leaders, the political leaders, nobody is hinting towards an end in that perspective. Everybody is pumped up and ready to turn the heat, turn the volume on. And this escalation, it it brings the like for example, there's some news I've seen on Twitter where the North Korean have joined the war in Ukraine and Russia. I don't know which side they joined, but it's pretty obvious they joined the Russian side in my view of it. But that's just an escalation rate. And now the people who are fighting the Russians feel the need to escalate also because this side has escalated, so this kind has escalated. Next, you hear another country join another country, and you reach a point, even us Kenyans will have to join. Like for example, we are already in Haiti fighting the whatever, what is the bandits? Not the bandits, the guys that have decided to terrorize the Haitians in their own home. So we as Kenyans send our police there to help. That is us getting involved. That is us extending someone else's problem beyond their borders into our borders. And now we might think we are doing something good to them, but in the same effort as you're doing something good to them, something bad is going to retaliate back at us because we are not tackling, we are not dealing with reasonable people who can negotiate. We're dealing with unreasonable people. So they do unreasonable things. And that is the payback we get for doing something that seems reasonable to unreasonable people. We get unreasonable actions brought back to us. And that is a simple example showing how this problem is looping people in, roping, by roping them, it's bringing people into its own mess. Think of a black hole. There's a hole and it sucks everything around it. So this hole is war. This black hole, this metaphor, is war. And this war is bringing countries in one by one. Everyone is forced to pick a side. You're either fighting for or against, whichever the enemy you think it is. And this situation keeps building up, building up, building up. And sooner or later, it might get out of hand. Because you see, we live in an age where technology is key. And I mean technology. Have you heard of artificial intelligence? That is technology. Forget the TV and the technology that was there in World War II, the kinds of nuclear technology and all that. Forget that. Think of the technology that is currently available, the softwares, the infrastructure. So if we were to loop if we were to allow this black hole to loop us into this dark age of war, the reality of it, we are going to walk into something we don't even understand. Because the way this thing is going to play out, the way this war is going to play out, is beyond any of us understanding. And we might think, we might be confident in our view and our perspective and our plan. But the idea and the basic thing behind it is this is an animal that has never been witnessed before. Forget the World War II. That was an, an old war, a war in the olden age. It was like the same. You can compare World War II with the sword fight that was happening in the past. So that's the thing. World War II is like a sword fight in the current age. Because most of those technologies that were there in World War II are now considered very old, things of the past, things that put in a museum. But what is currently available now are the kind of things you see only in a movie, the sci-fi kind of technology. And with that technology, we're creating a space where war is going to give that technology wrong reflects its own muscle on us people. Because you see, at the end of the day, you might think you're my enemy, I might think you're my enemy, but we are all people. And this new technology, first of all, the AI is not the kind of technology that can uh, relate with you as a human being. It can't, because it sees things on a binary perspective, zeros and ones. You see things from a spectrum. You can see this perspective because you are exposed to this environment. You can see this perspective because you're exposed to that environment. You can see this. And in our conversation, we share this difference in perspective so as to get a whole big spectrum. So, in essence, our spectrum is not standardized, it's custom based on our own exposure and experiences. And that's what makes us unique as individuals, as humans. But that's not the case for AI. AI is a binary. Yes, we can argue it learns from data and all that. But at the end of the day, it's binary. And so in this conversation right here, I want to shed light into the animal that is the war that is currently brewing across the world. And I want to appeal to those people who think are fighting their enemies, to really think through. Because you might think you're doing the right thing at the moment, but the ripple effect of that action might not be the right thing in the future. And that is the future you think you're fighting for. Because somebody told you do this doesn't mean that is the right thing to do. And because somebody didn't tell you how to do this doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. You have to be very conscious and aware that actions have consequences. Just like the third law of Newton, action has an equal and opposite reaction. But you see, these things have no meaning to a soldier because a soldier does what the orders say. So I'm appealing to the people giving the orders because in this conversation, you need to understand that what is happening miles away from where you live will find its way back to where you live, whether directly or indirectly. And come to think of it, what's the worst thing that can happen if everyone decided to be in a peaceful coexistence? What's the worst thing that will happen? Just ask yourself, what's the worst thing that will happen if there was no war? What is the worst thing that will happen if nobody felt the need to use power as a means to justify their way? It's my way or the happy way. You see, that kind of an arrogant perspective, and then you use power to whip people into following your path. Think of Kenya, not so long ago in June. Power was used against the people in a very ugly and undesirable way. And everyone came out to condemn it. Why? Because that's the reality of it. Nothing beautiful comes out of this madness, this obsession of being in power. Nothing beautiful comes from wanting to exert your influence, exerting your desires by force. Nothing. It all leads down to this depressive and dark black hole. And it's not to towards tomorrow or the day after that. But at least you get to think of it before you push it that far. So that when you push it that far, despite these warnings, you know it was completely your fault. You knew better, but you didn't choose to do it. And you take responsibility, and that's something you live with for the rest of your life. And until then, I like to leave you with that. Just think about it. Because ask yourself, What's the worst thing that will happen if we are all living in a peaceful coexistence? We don't have to agree on everything. We can agree on disagree, we can disagree on everything. But does that justify violence? Does that justify the need to kill? Does that justify the need to conquer? If you feel you really, really want to conquer, conquer yourself. Peace.